We are still assessing the needs of Jacksonville. We're going to have some hard conversations about things we were right and wrong about. Mine, I was wrong about Davon Hamilton. We'll talk about that today.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. We appreciate you joining us if you're an everyday, and if you're not, thank you for joining us and giving me an opportunity to make you an everyday here on Locked On Jaguars, which is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. Today's episode is Crossover Thursday. No game, so no crossover, but it is still presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, it's time for me to come correct before I start telling y'all what the Jaguars should do next year. I'm going to tell you where I was wrong at. And you probably already, if you're one of the people that wants to search the history to find out where I was right or wrong, you can always go back and look up these old episodes. If you're not one of those types of people, which means you're not some miserable person that's always trying to prove people like me wrong, which I welcome it because I'm wrong a lot. Let me tell you where I was wrong. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you people that I was wrong about, but the Jaguars ended up getting right about in the third segment. People I thought I was right about, but I was absolutely wrong about in the second segment. They sound alike, but they're not. Trust me. First and foremost, we're going to start out with the number one person I was wrong about, and that's Davon Hamilton. He is underappreciated. Davon Hamilton is a top 5 defensive nose tackle, the 1 and the 0 in the National Football League. He is the nose tackle on the team that led the NFL in rushing defense. I thought Davon Hamilton was what needed to be replaced. When people were screaming for Mason Graham last year, I said, what are you going to do that for? And you got Armstead, y'all want back inside making a bunch of money. You got Mason Smith, who this staff, I think, has a very high regard for. You don't need a 3 technique. He's not going to help you stop the run. I said they really needed Kenneth Grant. In fact, somebody in that building asked me right before the draft last year, okay, what should we do? I said, here's what I think. Is my rationale for thinking it. If you gave me one player to pick in the National Football League from around the National Football League last offseason, I said the one player, and you can probably find a thumbnail with this on. I said the one player that helps this team the most would be Dexter Lawrence. And the person said, okay, all right. So I said the most Dexter Lawrence player in this draft is Kenneth Grant. However, the person that I believe is worth picking where you guys are picking that I would probably take would be Armand Mimbo. Now, if you take Mimbo, I wouldn't have been wrong because Mimbo's a real good right tackle, right? But that would have been contingent on me thinking they were going to move Anton Harrison to left tackle, and that's not what they did. So it would have been a little bit of overkill unless you play Mimbo at right guard, which a lot of people thought he could have played. Oh, that would have been nasty. But still, all right, I'm happy what they did. They picked Travis Hunter. But here's why I was wrong, and this is why I focused so much of yesterday's show on making sure that when you start talking about what they need, that you're not talking about what you want as opposed to what they need. At least make an educated guess on what they think they need. They had no inclination to be taking on those tackles. And I'm sitting here thinking that was what they needed more than anything. And the dude that they got, they're probably so happy with him, and he's underrated. Josh Allen said he's the best nose tackle in the league. And there was a lot of people in New York this year that thought Dexter Lawrence, his play slipped a little bit. So be very, 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 very careful when you think you know what they need and you spend all of this time huffing and puffing. And then you think you're being disappointed. Well, really, you're not being disappointed by their actions. You're being disappointed by your expectation. So I'm even in that same group. But I'm not going to sit here and keep doing podcasts telling you why I was right and they were wrong, because obviously I was wrong. So the thing is for me to just be honest about it and use that to try to help me. And this is one of the things I've done over the years. I've used that to try to help me figure and learn how they move. And that's the part of this that for me, it's almost just like when I play fantasy football. I just want to see if I was right about who's going to have a lot of yards and who's not. I'm not rooting for the teams of those specific players. Sometimes I have players on my fantasy team that are hurting me by actually doing what I thought they were going to do because I'm rooting for the other team. So when I do this, I'm not necessarily going to live and die like I need to be right. But the game inside of the game is I've done this for 32 teams for like 40 years, or however many teams it was in the league at the time. And now I get to do it for Jacksonville, but I'm doing it from a position of strength for the first time in a long time. Like they're one of the best teams in the league with one of the best quarterbacks, who, by the way, right before I started recording, Trevor Lawrence was named as a top 5 finalist for the AP MVP. He's the Pro Football Writers. This is one of them, the MVP, the NFL honors, as well as Comeback Player of the Year. And Liam Cohen was a finalist for Coach of the Year. Both deserve everything that's coming to them collectively together. I told y'all, when you get a deadly combination of a head coach and quarterback, man, that's something to behold. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so optimistic, because those two guys are going to be tied at the hip for the next decade. And I couldn't be happier that the Jaguars fan base gets a shot to have that. That's probably going to be the show tomorrow too. Those two guys tied at the hip. But let's get back to this Davon Hamilton appreciation stuff and why I was wrong and why I'm glad I was wrong. I'm glad I was wrong because now I want them to extend it, drop his salary down a little bit, extend it for a couple of more years, and find somebody to go next to him. And I don't mean on the outside, I mean on the inside. Go get that 3 technique. And the 3 technique is something that I thought I was right about, that I turned out to be absolutely wrong about last year. And that's what we're going to hit in segment 2. It ain't the only position. There's another one. Maybe the best Jaguar this year I thought was a dude that was totally expendable. This is the fully transparent gotcha moment. You're wrong. For all of those people that think I just sit up here, or people like me, especially on my network, and you just bump our gums and don't take accountability. I'm taking accountability for it right now. And you always take accountability when you do your show every single day, 30 minutes a day. There's always an opportunity for you to catch us being accountable. And that's what you got me doing today. I'm going to tell you why and who I was wrong about. I thought I was right about, but I was wrong about both of them. One in a good way, one in a bad way. We'll hit it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Robinhood. Man, what if sports were traded like the markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy, sell your positions live all game long using your sports knowledge in the moments that matter the most. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It gives it's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but I never really had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. And now I actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator, play by play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin futures and cleared swaps. Trading involves a significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. And today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is in full swing, man. These playoffs are rolling along, and there's nothing like being at the game. The crowd noise, the energy, and cheering alongside other fans watching at home is great, but being in the stadium, it's different. The frustrating part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I pulled up the Game Time app to check out upcoming conference championship playoff games, and I found great ticket options almost instantly. The app is incredible. It's intuitive, browsing, comparing, and buying tickets It took just minutes. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app and get back to being there live. All right, moving along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. Real quick, something I'm going to hit on tomorrow, the quarterback coach combo. Both Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen being acknowledged as finalists for Coach of the Year and MVP, as well as Comeback Player of the Year. That bodes well for this team moving forward in the future. So that's going to be the Friday show here on Locked On Jaguars. Now we're going to admit when we were wrong about something that we swore up and down we were right about. I've already told y'all, because it's on record, I thought the Jaguars needed a nose tackle last year, and I was off base. Not saying that they'd have got another player that they wouldn't have still been good, because Davon Hamilton can actually play a little bit of three technique too, but it wouldn't have been the best use of their resources. It would not have been. So I was wrong about that, but I'm going to still take more stabs at it. Because the one thing in all of this is that you don't take into consideration what they're doing behind the scenes to extract stuff out of people. Everything that I thought going into last year was based on demonstrated performance that I had seen based on what other folks in the past staffs asked for them to do. And it's one of the most difficult things for, I believe, a coach to evaluate is, okay, what was he asked to do? I see the result of what happened, but why did it happen? And that's where you have to have a keen eye for stuff. One of the things that I want to point out too with that is when you listen to Liam Cohen, and he talked about, not Liam, it was James Gladstone, when he talked about the McLeod kid that they took from Auburn last year, that when the kid went to the Senior Bowl, they asked him to do something other than what he did. He was an undersized pass rusher at Auburn. Goes to the Senior Bowl, they asked him to stand up. He does it without even flinching. In the process of doing that without even flinching, he doesn't really look that good. But the Jaguars were going to draft him to come in here and play special teams and be an undersized pass rusher. The fact that they said that he did that and went to do it and didn't make excuses actually was a check mark in their favor. Now, I think he got drafted later, was undrafted, but it doesn't matter. It's the reason he got an opportunity. The reason he got an opportunity was because they weren't going to ask him to do something that he failed at doing. They were going to ask him to do something that he was good at doing. So you don't really know how teams feel about guys' superpowers and or their role in what they're going to ask to do. So now they've made me look at prospects different this year. I now look at what guys' strengths are and say, is that something that the Jaguars can inject into their team without also bringing along things that they can't get rid of, like weaknesses that are going to cancel out those things or make them weak in other areas. So that being said, I was wrong about how they were able to pull that out of Davon Hamilton. Here's something I was wrong about that I wish I was right about, but I wasn't. I thought Eric Armstead and Mason Smith were going to be this is why I didn't think they needed Mason Graham, because I didn't think they needed a three technique. Now I think they need a three technique. See how easy it is for you to realize that you were wrong, to realize that the Jaguars probably misread it, or there's a situation where they realize, hey man, we can't fix everything in 1 year, because fixing everything in 1 year sometimes requires you to make a multiple year decision on a player. Everybody ain't gonna let you transfer a portal him and come in here and do 1 year deals. If a guy's good enough to play in front of Mason Smith and Eric Armstead, he ain't signing a 1 year deal. He wants a multi-year deal. But if you're not sure about that, you can't go out here giving 3 and 4 year deals, because it puts you right back in the same situation that you're in now, where you have guys under contract that aren't playing well. Or you're allocating too many funds to one position. And that's one of the things that I kind of guard against too when I start doing this. Is like, Look, unless they're going to move on from this dude, people are saying, like with Max Crosby, could they make it work? Yeah, I'm sure they could make it work. You have 3 pass rushers. Uh, some of them are multiple. You can go to multiple fronts. You can go an odd front and have Josh Allen and Max Crosby, one of them standing up and one of them down, or letting them figure out what they're going to do and what gap they're going to line up in, and put Trayvon at 4I or 4B. And then have a nose tackle, and then maybe another fat defensive tackle next to him who can 2 gap. Yeah, sure, you could probably pull that off. But what I keep asking people is, are you going to lock yourself into some just to get something extra? Are you going to then lock yourself into having to do things a certain way that don't really line up with the rest of it? It's like a balancing act, man. Yeah, but I was wrong about those 3 techniques. I said they didn't need one. They absolutely needed one. In fact, somebody over there told me they didn't think they needed one. It ain't nobody making a decision, but it's just somebody who's there every day. He thought they didn't need one. It turns out we were both wrong. They did need one. I'm gonna tell you something else I was wrong about, but I'm glad I was right about. I'm glad I was wrong about this one. Might not last long, but I thought Devin Lloyd was okay. If they keep him, they keep him. If they don't, they don't. Okay, if they pull something out of him, they pull something out of him. I was spot on with him when they did not pick up the 5th-year option of Devin Lloyd. Devin Lloyd was the Jaguars' defensive MVP. There you go. T-Week just admitted he was wrong again, but it's something I was glad that I was wrong about. Once again, this is another example of judging it based on demonstrated performance, not some blind expectation that I knew Anthony Campanile was going to somehow shake a magic wand and all of a sudden Devin Lloyd was going to start playing in a different way. Lights out. In fact, I think he would have been a first-team All-Pro and maybe even the defensive player of the year had he not gotten injured, because that's the kind of path he was on before he got hurt. And then when he got off, when he came back, he was still disrupting things and being the same way. And he made himself a lot of money in the process, but he might have made himself too much money to play in Jacksonville next year. But still, something that I was wrong about, but it turned out in a good way for the Jaguars. Something that I thought I was right about didn't turn out good, and that was the fact that I didn't think the Jaguars needed a 3 technique, but they obviously do. Now I'm going to tell you things I thought I was wrong about, but I'm getting confused my damn self. But y'all know what I mean. Things that I was wrong about, but the Jaguars made right. There you go. I was wrong about this too, but it was things that I was expecting that absolutely did not happen, but the Jaguars fixed it, made it right. But there still may be a little bit more room at the wide receiver position for them to even add more. We'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper, but they weren't the right fit, you know how important it is to get that right. When your candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed support sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs when you truly want to match your candidate with the job. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for this show, I go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. And I guarantee you, the person I get will be the right one. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. Using Indeed sponsored jobs, listeners of this show get $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. And our show is also sponsored by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take your life over, man. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with local TurboTax experts in person, or you can connect online. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, if you're not a member of the Everydayers Club and you want to be, well, look down in that description wherever you watch or listen to this podcast. You can become a member of the Everydayers Club. Now, I'll be here every day giving you the podcast that I always do. But want a little bit more access to our merch store and those ad-free audio shows, even more than that, for as little as $5, go join the Everydayers Club. Click on that down in the description. Okay, so I'm talking about things that I thought I was right about, I was wrong about, and things that I ended up being right about, wrong about, that the Jaguars made right. And if I say that really, really fast one more time, y'all gonna have to call an ambulance. But listen, I thought Brian Thomas Jr. was a hands down top 10 wide receiver. And in fact, I said he wasn't 10, 8, or 9. I thought he was a top 7 wide receiver. I thought he was trending in that direction. I was a big BTJ fan coming out in the draft. I'm not so sure about that. In fact, I'm sure that I'm wrong. He's not a top 10 wide receiver. It has nothing to do with physical ability. And that whole second year doesn't cancel out what he did as a rookie in his first season, because it happened. And when you do that for an entire year in the NFL, it's not one game or 2 games here or there. It wasn't no Jeremy Lin performance, no disrespect to Jeremy, but it just wasn't that. You can't have the type of year he had week after week in that league. I respect that league that much without you having something. But when I started talking top 10, I didn't think he didn't have something. And the little thing that I'm thinking that he didn't have was that certain dog temperament that it takes to week in and week out be a dominant X receiver in the National Football League. I'm not going to say the man that doesn't have heart. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know if it's the football version of the yips or whatever they call it. The Hall of Famer, in my opinion, Jimmy Smith, says his stance is too high, and that's causing a lot of problems with him not being able to release and stack the way you should. I trust a guy like that, like Jimmy, that has 9 1,000-yard receiving years. But I also trust that between Liam Cohen and all of those other coaches on staff and Edgar Bennett, who I've been knowing for 40 years, that if that's the case, they could just tell him that, right? So I don't know what he's been taught, what he's been told, what's the difference between this year and last year, what's going on with him. But whatever it is, it's something, because I saw a guy named Jamar Chase have the drops when he first got to the NFL, and he said, don't worry about it, I'll work through it. And he kept dropping the ball in practice, and he kept dropping the ball in preseason, and then the first week of the season, they threw him a go route, and he caught it and started doing the gritty, and he's been doing the gritty ever since. It's almost as if, like, when those moments come, the dude that I thought Brian Thomas Jr. would overcome whatever it is he needs to overcome, and he hasn't quite done it, to the point where the team is confident enough to throw at him more than the 2 times that they did in a playoff game that they lost against the Buffalo Bills. What did the Jaguars need? They needed a playmaker. They needed an alpha dog wide receiver that could play in that moment with tough coverage, not necessarily a route runner, a little bit of both, but they needed somebody. The Jaguars lacked explosives in that play. The dude that was supposed to be their most explosive player was Brian Thomas Jr. And though he did catch a touchdown pass early in the game, for some reason they never went back to him. Maybe Trevor didn't have the time. Maybe it's a combination of all of that. But the dude that I thought Brian Thomas Jr. would have found a way to figure out how to be the guy that they needed to throw the ball to. Maybe he can get it right. Maybe they won't. Maybe they move on. Maybe they don't. Somebody they are moving on from is somebody else I was wrong about, but it does not matter. And I'll tie it all together and tell you why the Jaguars got it right. I was wrong about Diami Brown and his $10 million for one season. The Jaguars were wrong too. It's something that they took a chance with. The chance that they took, I feel you. Somebody that James Gladstone had scouted and wanted, him and Les Snead even kind of joked about it after he was signed. Les said, I knew he was going to do something like that, because you could tell that this was somebody that James Gladstone had always felt he could put in a situation where he could succeed. It didn't happen. For whatever reason, it did not happen. It never materialized here in Jacksonville. He got banged up. It didn't happen. Right, wrong, or indifferent, let's just move on, right? And that's exactly what the Jacksonville Jaguars did, because you know what they did? They realized that Parker Washington at that point, especially after Travis Hunter got hurt, was their best option. And they allowed him, and because of who they are, their character, because they lack ego, they pushed it aside and said, okay, Parker, you've been doing well. Let me see what you got. And then they realized with both of them that they were still having problems with drops, and they go make a trade for Jacoby Myers. And immediately the function of this offense and that team changes. Immediately, Trevor Lawrence starts playing in a way that has now ended up with him being a top 5 finalist in both NFL MVP as well as comeback player of the year. And the Jaguars went on a masterful run. Now, is Jacoby Myers some perfect wide receiver? No, but he's a good glue wide receiver for this team, and he makes this team better. Parker Washington is a dude that I absolutely believe needs to be a lifer as a Jaguar. What do they do with Brian Thomas Jr.? Diamond Brown's a free agent, so his money comes back on the books or goes off the books, whichever way you want to look at it. What do they do with Brian Thomas Jr.? This is the $1 million question, because if they believe Brian Thomas Jr., if they can salvage it to the point where he can be the explosive wide receiver that we all figured he would be, then that's a good thing. If they don't know, that's just like thinking that he won't be. Because at some point you have to figure out what you're going to do. Now, he's only in the 3rd year of a rookie deal, right? So you have time. But you can't miss out on opportunities to maybe go out and get a Romeo Dobbs. If you can move Brian Thomas Jr.'s money as well as move the money that you're already paying, well, you had paid Diamond Brown, maybe you end up with both of the wide receivers that you looked for last year. Now you go in with Dobbs as your downfield guy, Jacoby Myers as your Keenan McCardell, where he's going to eat the route tree up, Parker Washington inside in the slot, Travis Hunter is your number 4 because he's going to play more defense, and then draft a dude, bring Tim Patrick back, and then draft another guy and count Travis as a cornerback. Maybe since Parker's going to have a more permanent role, you get like a Zachariah Branch type and make him your punt returner. They're going to have a lot of options. But this is why I'm doing this, man. I had to admit that I was wrong about people that the Jaguars end up getting right, and I was gladly wrong about other people like Davon Hamilton. I was gladly wrong about Devin Lloyd. I was gladly wrong about them. Wasn't necessarily gladly wrong about Mason Smith, Armstead, and Brian Thomas Jr. and Dahami, but at least in one of those situations, the Jaguars were able to pivot and they got good production, and that's at wide receiver. So I'm still looking at 3 technique, the position that I said the Jaguars did not need a player last year. I'm saying right now it's the thing that they need the most. So you can take that for a grain of salt, and y'all can wear me out with it all day long. But at least I admitted that I was wrong about something a year ago, or maybe I did not have the near sight and the foresight. I'm not in the building. That's one thing. The other thing is I had no idea how they were going to be able to pull stuff out of people. I had no idea other people were going to walk away and not respond to that pressure. We do now, though. So now maybe that'll help you as you're looking towards the draft and free agency to see the type of players that this team will go after. I'll be here every single day. I'll be back tomorrow. We're going to do that quarterback coach combo and why it's so important with Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen moving forward. Well, we thank you for joining us here today, a little bit over 29 and a half minutes. Spending time with me. You know I love it here on Locked on Jaguars, man. We'll see you next time.